Hello again, I'm Mark. Welcome back to Three Bridges, my layout in the loft. Not so much in the loft this week, as if anybody's in the UK, they'll perfectly understand. The heat wave made it very warm up there. We had the luxury of being up in Scotland where it's cooler. It got up to early 20s really, and the loft sort of got up to about 30. No idea what happened down south, because I know it got up to sort of early 30s, so I presume lofts got up to nearly 40. So yeah, not a lot of action I should imagine being filmed or work being done in people's lofts further south. Anyway, I've managed to get some stuff done in mine in the cool of the evenings. So I've got two more of the boards made, one's up in the loft and this one's going to go up shortly. So if you remember a couple of episodes back, and if you're new to it, I'm basically putting in the second deck in my loft layout with these open frameworks. So, and once this is made, I'm currently ripping down the last strips to make the last of the open framework, so the whole of the second deck is now got a framework structure around it. And I suppose I should introduce what I'm going to do next. So my plan, well, the first goal is just to get one track running around the loft. It doesn't really matter exactly where it is, but it'll be roughly in the right place. It just allows me to run some trains whilst I still sort out things like I need to put some lighting in all of these for the deck below, because what I am finding now is that as I build more of a structure, and certainly as I start to put a baseboard over the top and cover it up, then the light below needs a separate lighting system. Always knew I'd need to do that, so that's an LED ring. That's about 20 meters long, I think, so I need to find one of those. When I started this layout 3 years ago, I had a rough plan of what I wanted to do on each of the levels, and I will dig that out at some point and show you to it, but just very briefly. So for the second level, I am basically, that's the West Coast Line second level track plan as I want to have it. So basically this part here is down in London on the lowest deck, and I've got 4 platforms, sidings at the station. So that's effectively my fiddle yard for my West Coast Line rolling stock. It then runs around the back of Harrow on the Hill, slowly works its way, starting about here to incline up, and runs through the back of the Chiltern lines, disappears up into the clouds above Amersham, and then goes around, and it's sort of passing in front of this board through a cutting, and then about here it actually gets up to the second deck. So the plan is to have a major station about here it's got 4 lines for the West Coast Line, and there's 2 East Coast lines, so there'll be 6 lines going through that station. And then I'll have basically an up and a down running around the loft in these 2 loops. And there's another station here, which is Rugby, and there'll be Long Buckby about here. It doesn't quite match up with reality, but it allows me to do those various scenes. Anyway, I plan to do all of this in 4 stages, I think. The first stage is literally to take the existing line, 1 point, and then it will just loop around the loft and back, so I can run trains around and then drop them back down to the London station. And at some point later, probably early next year, I will put in the second loop and a few more of the passing loops in the stations as well. So there's no rush to get all that track work done. I've got a plan for what I need to buy in terms of the points, turnouts, and what I just need to work out at the moment is the blocks that I want to run it under. So what I have discovered from, I suppose, the lower section is I probably over planned a number of blocks, and then find that actually from where the train starts to where it stops, running from Aylesbury to Marylebone, although there's a couple of isolated blocks in the middle, if they're on, they're on, if they're off, they're off. you don't find you need to turn them on and off an awful lot. So I probably overcompensated there, but certainly at Marylebone, depending on which platform you're pulling the train out of, then the points controls the power in, and so I do need block control at that point. So giving it a bit of thought in terms of how I would operate this, as that's the lesson I suppose I've learned from the lower deck. How you operate it really affects how you need to have the block control, not design the block control without giving any thought to how you operate it and then discovering that you've basically gone for a bit of overkill. So yeah, that was the first lesson. The second one was, so on this lower level, obviously on my Chiltern line I'm running a lot of passenger freight. DMU's basically running from Aylesbury round to Marylebone and then back, and with this second level again the majority of the trains are going to be passenger trains, so the fact that they run up, I don't need to turn them round to run them back down, they just reverse direction and head down. So it's only the freight trains from my little London goods yard, which I almost use as like a shunting puzzle. I might run some of them up, so I'm thinking of maybe having somewhere on this second level around here where I can just have a small siding that I can park a goods train in, and a bit of a run around so that I can change the engine round so that you can then run the goods train back to the London Freight Yard. So the other main difference I suppose is it's a lot simpler. So with the lowest level I think I got up to 56 points or turnouts. So with this one we did have a plan, but it's about 15 points I think. So still quite a bit of track in terms of the running around, but it's not as complex, and the main part about the second level is just to have trains running around continuously, because I've discovered that is how I enjoy it. I do enjoy doing my little shunting puzzle, but not sort of all the time. So trying to keep it more simpler. Also with the open framework, on the lower level everything's pretty much flat. There's very little terrain apart from where the line is inclining up. But with the second deck I want to have the scenery around the two lines having a bit more undulation in it, either going below it or above it. So I'll try and keep most of the track on a fairly level line, because everything runs a lot smoother, but I want to use the open framework to build up the terrain a lot more. So whereas on my lowest deck I would then sheet the whole of this with a board as the baseboard, here I'm just going to put the board in for where the tracks are going to run, and then it'll give me some freedom to do something different between. So that'll also be a big difference, which I'm looking forward to doing. So a lot more scenics on the second deck than maybe I've got on the first. Fewer stations, so just 3, whereas I think there's 10 on the lower deck. And there's something else that would be seasonally. So my lower deck is early autumn. This one's going to be more late autumn. So again, I also want to have the scenics looking quite different as you move up the various levels, which I'm also looking forward to. So that's the plan. I think I've waffled on for too long. I'll go and find the original plan so you can see how this has changed slightly. When I was looking at it the other day, I had completely forgotten how I'd originally designed the second level as a sort of an inspiration 3 years ago. But it's quite good to go back and just see where your thoughts had changed. This is a lot simpler. Okay, so I suppose 3 years ago and I have no idea what an IAB stands for. It's something agricultural. So my son went to a conference when he was at uni. I did 4 sketches, and basically these are what my thoughts were at the time. So this first one, very familiar to me. At the moment, a few things have changed. So this is effectively Aylesbury running around to Wendover, Amersham, and then Harrow on the Hill, and then it was going to run around to London. The scale of everything is all over the place. And then next to it was going to be this huge London station further down the loft. Well, there wasn't as much space here, and there was going to be a return loop. That's all gone as well. And so the dark is the West Coast Line, and the red's the East Coast Line. And they basically run around up to the second level, which still pretty much exists. On the lower level, this was the underground. So again, pretty much as I built it. So Uxbridge, Amersham, passing around underneath the London board, looping back and round. So that stayed. These are the thoughts of the West Coast Line, and they're quite radically different actually. So the lines, so obviously originally I had 4 lines coming up. I simplified that down to just 2 lines basically. So visually it looks like it's an up and a down, but effectively it's an up-down West Coast and an up-down East Coast line. And they're on different circuits because I may still do the East Coast Line as DCC. Just got to pluck up courage to do it. You then come up. Originally they were going to go straight into Rugby. They don't. So effectively they get to Rugby once they've gone around the loft once. And then at this point I was trying to think, well, if they've come up, they need to be able to run and return back. What I then realised, I suppose, by running the up and down end to end for the Chiltern line, is that with the DMUs you don't have to turn them around, they just run in the other direction at some point. So that got rid of all of that, and in fairness there isn't a space in the loft for that anyway. So quite a lot of that, had changed. But again, there was going to be the 3 stations, so I've kept that. And then while we're on it, so the red is the East Coast Line, so that will run round the loft once, so it would just be 1 line. And then about this point, you can either continue running around the second level, because I'm not going to get up to the 3rd level for a couple of years, so to avoid not being able to do anything with my trains, I will be able to run the West Coast and East Coast lines around the loft. And then at about this point, the East Coast Line will start inclining up to get to the top deck. The plans for this at the top deck have radically changed, and it's not even worth talking about what I had as a view. I have changed my mind so many times, so I am fairly confident that in the next 2 years I will redesign the top level again. So yeah. Anyway, so that was the thoughts I had. As I say, some of it happened and other things have changed as you sort of revisit things and simplify it. I think the key message was over-ambitious. Back then, most people probably stare at my layout and go, over-ambitious now, Mark. But yeah, well, that's all the fun of it, isn't it? Well, back indoors and in front of the wall of inspiration. So this is the stuff I can't get up into the loft yet, or it sort of sits here whilst it's waiting to go in the loft. So in terms of what I'm going to run on the second level, those who are interested, so for my layout, obviously inspired by Railway Journeys of My Life, the second level is, majority of it is I suppose from 93, I think it's 93 to 2023, so a good 30 years. Before that period, I was travelling up and down from London to Chester every other week, and so a lot of the old BR Blue rolling stock, occasionally on the 125, so there's be some of that. A lot of this old carriage work is mine from my childhood, so when I was about 10. So they're nice and old, and I still like to run them. And then I suppose for the last 20 years, a lot of this stuff, so this is the London Midlands, this stuff has gone through so many different changes in terms of the logo and the train operator, and there's a name for it, but I can't remember what it is at the moment. It'll come back. Anyway, I think at the moment they're purple and yellow. Anyway, so I've got a couple of these. These are the Bachmann ones. They run beautifully, so looking forward to getting them done. And then there'll be some older stuff and some older diesels as well, so some Class 37s and Deltics. And then for the freight, I'll just run whatever I like, really, because in fairness, the main freight I used to see is the stuff that's going to be on my East Coast line and is part of my sort of DERF line. So the freight that will run around the second deck on the East Coast line will be the more modern freight, and then that'll be running up to the top deck eventually. In terms of the progress on this, I'm still building walls. The hot weather makes the glue set quite quickly, but I've got to make 27 of these panels. I think I'm at about 13 or 14. I'll make a few more tonight. So hopefully by the end of the weekend I will have all the panels made and I can start weathering them. Been trying out a little bit of colouring for the posts, so going with more of a sort of metallic blue. We'll see. Anyway, I'll probably do an update on that next week. But apologies if it's just me waffling on, but it just felt like with the heat and everything, this was an episode just to talk about track plans, so that in 2 or 3 years' time when I go, why did I build that? I'll be able to look back to this one and go, well, that's the thoughts you had at the time, Mark. So, as always, if you made it this far, thanks for watching. Maybe I'll catch you next week. Cheers.